impact of the budget on consumers, institutions like the Credit Ombud work to mediate between consumers and credit providers in areas of dispute. Well, to talk about the work of the Credit Ombud, I'm joined by Credit Ombudsman designate Nicky Lala-Mohan, who assumes the new role from the beginning of next month. Thank you very much for joining us, Nicky.
Thank you. Good evening.
Just tell us, what is the role of the Credit Ombudsman?
What we do is that we resolve disputes between members of the credit industry and consumers out there. So we act as a liaison in terms of resolving disputes. We act as an educator to the public in matters relating to the credit industry, and at all times we'll act honestly, independently and fairly.
Okay. Now, to what extent are the decisions of the Credit Ombudsman, to what extent are they binding between the parties?
We have what we call terms of reference, and in the terms of reference we set out whatever role that we have in terms of. So essentially what we can do is that we generally negotiate, mediate and arbitrate, but if unsuccessful, then we make a ruling. And then me as the Ombudsman would make a ruling which is binding on the credit providers.
Now, assuming that situation doesn't work out, can they refer the matter to a higher institution?
Yes, they could. They could go to the National Consumer Tribunal. They could also go to court or challenge your ruling or whatever the case may be. But generally, we don't really have, in the last 4 years, no rulings have been made. The credit providers generally abide by our decisions. Okay,
so on Monday you'll be the new kid on the block, you'll be the big kahuna there. What issues are sort of very top of your mind that you want to spearhead as soon as you start?
I think the most topical one last year was the credit amnesty, which was the removal of adverse consumer information. What is going to be topical is the issue of EAOs, which is emoluments attachment orders, which is the garnishes. There's a case currently taking place in Cape Town where the University of Stellenbosch Law Clinic has taken on certain credit providers in a class action in relating to number of wine farm workers in the wine district in Cape Town. So that's going to be quite a topical one. And we're getting more and more queries about these EAOs.
Yes, now I do understand that the number of complaints have skyrocketed since the amnesty was announced last year.
Yes.
So how do you intend to deal with issues around capacity?
Well, it's skyrocketed, but because of the amnesty and the clearing, we find that has come down. At the time before the amnesty took place on the 1st of April, 50% increase in calls. People wanting to know general inquiries, how do I come off the bureau, what will happen to my credit record. But now that has happened, we find that has come down completely. But you'll find the cycle going back, because then people, normally what happens is that they get back into difficulties and they get back into adverse credit and they get back into judgments, and then we start over again. So we find that's going down, but it's coming up again.
Now, I must admit to being rather confused about the various roles that institutions play in the credit arena. How do you differ as a credit ombudsman to the National Credit Regulator?
See, the National Credit Regulator is an organization created by statute in terms of legislation, in terms of the National Credit Act. So it is a regulator and it has enforcing capacity. We, to a large extent, are an NGO, we are a voluntary scheme, people belong to us, but we liaise with the National Credit Regulator. We have a memorandum of understanding with them that we will deal with disputes or the complaints relating to credit and credit information. So, and they are the ultimate enforcer, and the National Consumer Tribunal is the highest in terms of credit, highest court kind of. So those are creatures of statute. We are voluntary, we have a constitution, we have terms of reference, people buy into us voluntary.
Nicely explained. Now, yesterday was a big deal. Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene laying out what he's planning to do in terms of tax. The consumer is going to be hit. To what extent does that make your job a bit more difficult or not?
Well, it depends on the income band that people are in or whatever. The lower income, certainly it will make them difficult to pay their credit. And then they get into difficulty. And then, and all the challenges relating to that, so we probably will see an increase in complaints coming through.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. That was Nicky Lala-Mohan. He's the new Credit Ombudsman.